Hey everyone, welcome back to Mijo Podcast. Thank you for joining once again. Carlo, thank you so much for coming onto the Mijo Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting.
You're a first generation Latino, right? Your parents
Yes.
immigrated in the early 80s. Your mom's
Yep.
from Mexico City, your dad from Colima. I think the first question that I want to start off with is how did their stories shape the way that you understood work, opportunity, and like responsibility growing up? Because I think for me, seeing my parents and like now as an adult, understanding their stories and making the connections on, my work ethic and my values and my morals, I tie a lot back to like, the upbringing and their stories. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely think their journey and my grandparents' journey here really played a key role in like the self-starter hustle motivation that was kind of always instilled in me and that I've always just kind of led with. My grandparents came here, as I mentioned, like in the early 80s, and just seeing them go from immigrants who came here with almost nothing to building a life for themselves here in a country where they didn't speak the native language, yet they were still able to really build a life and a foundation, get home ownership. I think that was something that was always really inspiring for me. And I think when I was younger, you kind of like constantly hear the story, but I think you don't really fully grasp it until maybe you're a little bit older and you start to see, wait, not a lot of other people grew up like this, outside of like people that were also Latino or also immigrants to this country. But I think a lot of the resilience and a lot of the also entrepreneurship that I learned was from my grandfather, my grandmother. My grandfather built a very successful jewelry business when he was out here. That is all he really knew how to do. I don't think he made it past third grade, in Mexico City. So to just kind of see the evolution and the foundation and career that they've been able to build is something that has always stuck with me, especially whenever I feel like giving up. I'm like, there's really no way I could give up, when my parents have, really sacrificed and moved along so many other hurdles as well.
Wow, I think that's inspiring and definitely like kudos to your grandfather for starting a business. I know
Yeah,
like I give a lot of props to immigrants who start businesses because you're not only
absolutely.
learning a whole new culture, but you're learning like, how to run a business in a country that you weren't born in and that you had
Right.
to adapt and kind of like pivot and learn. And I think for me, like one of the biggest things is like, how does that story redefine the way that you think of success? Because I know for me, like, success for me was like, having a career and getting an education. And those were things that my parents highly valued. And I like pull that from them. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely for me, I think education was always at the forefront of, everything that was instilled in us. So we could be whatever it is we wanted to be, but as long as we went to school, got an education, graduated not only high school, but graduated college. On my dad's side of the family, not many graduated from high school. So I think that was very instilled in us, is graduating high school. And then when I got into university, that was also something that they really advocated and really pushed for me to finish. And yeah, I think similar to you, like education and having a career was something that was also instilled in like that what that success kind of looked like. So when I was able to achieve all of those, it was kind of something that it was a huge moment because not a lot of people. My parents didn't graduate college. My grandparents didn't graduate college. So to be, one of the first to graduate college in my family was a huge, accomplishment, not just for me, but for them as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know my parents always similar to your parents. They were like, "We don't care what you do, but as long as you get that degree and you have a
Yeah.
career, like we're happy." So, I know a lot of like, immigrant parents kind of apply that pressure towards like first gen students to pick a safe career, right? And I always hear like my friends are like, "Oh, my parents don't think that like pursuing the arts is a career. They want like a doctor or like a teacher, like very traditional roles." And I think for me that even like my parents were just like get an education, but even growing up, like I remember my first thing was like, oh, I'm going to go into school for business. And
Yeah.
then quickly realized that's not for me. And when the counselor was like, hey, like these are all the other careers that are out there, I was kind of like, whoa, I didn't know that you could like, be a public admin major. Like I didn't know that you could like study history and all these crazy things. So all that to say, like, did you always see yourself going into a traditional field, or was there some part of you that came to learn, like, you know what? I want to do something more creative. I want to do something more outside of the box. And that process, how that worked for you.
Yeah, I definitely think when I was younger and what I really wanted to pursue, I think for the longest time was like acting or TV broadcast. Like I always wanted to be kind of like a news reporter. And that was really what I wanted to do up until when I was in college. I kind of realized what the stability of a career like that was. It wasn't as stable. And so that's kind of when I made the pivot into PR and marketing, which was a little bit more stable. But I would definitely say that I think when I was in college, I definitely prioritized the stability over the creativity, which is something that I think not a lot of us as first gens were not all the time. We're not able to prioritize that creativity because, we are the first in our families to go to college or be in a lot of these industries or career spaces. And so we really want to find something that is stable, that not only provides for us, but sometimes provides for our family. And so I think for me, you know, having pursued something creative, I think would have been amazing and would have been fun. But ultimately, I knew that I had to, really pick something that provided that stability.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. I think similar to you, there were some other avenues that I looked into where I was like, this is great. And then I looked into like, is this really going to pay the bills, or am I going to like box myself in for a little bit? And,
Right.
you mentioned like PR and marketing and getting to there, but I also want to talk a little bit about your educational journey getting
Yeah.
there. So you shared with us earlier that you attended Cal State Northridge, and
Yeah.
you know, by the way, I love Cal States. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Oh,
I
I mean,
always brag
yeah,
about
yeah,
Cal
yeah.
States. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton. So, going through that journey as a first gen college student, how was that for you? Um, Kind of like applying to college, going through college, and really just getting through it without a roadmap, because I remember feeling a little overwhelmed when I was going through that college experience, because not all of us have that guidance that other people have. So tell us a little bit about that.
Navigating college without a roadmap is something that I definitely experienced. When I was at CSUN, one of my aunts who also immigrated here was continuing her journey of education. She went back to school. She's a single mom, went back to school. I want to say she must have been 32. So we were kind of going into it together. So I kind of picked up some guidance from her a bit. But for the most part, there really wasn't a roadmap. A lot of the how financial aid works, how to figure it out. A lot of, what are the course, like what is prerequisites, what is really a major. Like these are things that I kind of learned a little bit in high school, because I went to a high school that really had kind of like what is called like it was like a college career center where you can kind of learn a little bit more about college. But again, there was really no roadmap. It was just kind of like you apply to college and you hope you get in, and then you take the courses and kind of follow the guidance. I will say CSUN does a great job at really advocating for students, and I think part of the reason is that a majority of students that do attend CSUN are first gen, so they really do a great job in really uplifting, motivating, but also providing the resources. So a lot of my college guidance counselors were really helpful in, helping me navigate what that looked like. So I think that's what I really do love about CSUN, is that you don't feel like you're the only one, whereas I know other of my friends who went to either other universities or other Cal States where it wasn't necessarily like that. There wasn't a large first gen population, whereas I felt like at CSUN, it really was, something that was a large population there, and they really assisted in, guiding us through that.
I know I like Cal State Fullerton had tons of programs on campus. There
Yeah.
was like writing centers that'll help you with like
Yes.
curriculum as you're in college, but they even had things like career centers that would like help you pair with internships and with, job markets once you were ready to go that route. Did you take advantage of any program of that nature, like maybe the career center, go into any internships or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so there was quite a few centers that were really pivotal to, my education and career at CSUN. One being the Pride Center. It was a center where you could meet other people that were within the LGBTQIA community, but also it provided resources, whether it be educational resources, kind of like tutoring, or just jobs within that field, or just volunteering opportunities. And then there was an organization that I belonged to that was called Public Relations Student Society of America. So at CSUN, and of course other universities had like a chapter there. So whether you were like in business or marketing, they kind of had like their own similar organizations, but PRSSA in short, really helped me in one, learning from other peers who had either been alumni or had went to CSUN and had just graduated. It really helped understand what their career trajectory looked like, what kind of experience they had, as well as providing resources for like internships and I remember there was times where we would do like a resume 101 night, how a resume should look for an internship 101. So I would definitely say like take advantage of, any resources that you have available to you on campus, because there are a lot of resources.
Were there any internships that you got into while you were in college or maybe like right after college?
Yeah, so during college, I did quite a few internships. I unfortunately did some unpaid internships, which is something it's not that I regret. I felt like I got great experience, but I had to still work. So I was working part-time, going to school, and then also doing unpaid internships. It constantly felt at that time like it was 24/7. And this was also pre-COVID, where internships were like in office. There wasn't really like a remote or hybrid internship. So the fact that I was driving to an unpaid internship is crazy. But a majority of technically the way that they work in like LA is that you have to make them for credit. So you do get like a college credit applied. And so, I will say I did do quite a few internships during my time at CSUN. And then towards the end, I did, an internship one summer, that was paid, thankfully. So I did 2 unpaid, and then I did about 2 to 3 that were paid.
I feel you with the unpaid internships. I too did a few unpaid internships,
Yeah.
volunteered with nonprofits, got my credits, and then I was like, once I was done, I was like, there's no looking back. Like, I don't ever want to work
Yeah.
for free because it's a different type of work. It's not
Yeah.
like you're volunteering just passing out like waters. It's like, no, like you're using critical thinking, you're using your knowledge, what you're learning, and,
Yeah.
the experiences that you carry under your belt to kind of like benefit this agency that is going to use it in some cases for profit.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of there like, a job would be nice.
Right. Absolutely. A job or even just something, to incentivize. Like I think the for credit is great, but it shouldn't be the only incentivization, especially as you mentioned, like when you're putting in the time, the hours, and really just the experience and knowledge that you bring to as well. I definitely recommend, doing internships. If you can land a paid internship and not have to do unpaid, that's amazing. Do that. Because yeah, unpaid internships, while I think they can be beneficial and you do get like that credit aspect, it is time consuming and it can feel draining sometimes.
Definitely. So I know a lot of times students tend to feel a little discouraged because, they're not able to land the internships that they want, or maybe they're not as far along as their peers. And I understand, like, I always tell people we all have different journeys and different
Yep.
ways that we've gotten through college. What piece of advice do you give to someone, maybe a first gen like folk that's feeling that way? They're maybe behind or they feel like they're not doing enough, because I know that's definitely something that a lot of first gen folks go through, and it ties back to the pressures of like our family always pushing us to do more and wanting to get ahead and not having the resources, so we work twice as hard to try and get somewhere. What
Yeah.
would you say is some advice based on your personal experience?
Yeah, I would definitely say always giving yourself grace. I don't think a lot of us, we're constantly the first of something in our family. So whether that be the first in college, the first to graduate, or a lot of things, I definitely say remind yourself that you have already kind of accomplished a lot of things that maybe a lot of people in your family might not have. So always give yourself that grace and try to remind yourself that everyone's career journey and career trajectory looks different. I would definitely say the other side of that coin is that right now with the job market, it is a really tough time. And I think even when I was interning, a lot of the kind of like top internships were really like everyone was applying to them. And I would definitely say one thing that I had connected with she had just graduated college and she was applying all these internships. This was like maybe a year ago, and she created opportunities for herself. So I think there's a way to create opportunities for yourself, especially with social media now. And she always wanted to be in influencer marketing, kind of like what I was doing. And what she ended up doing was she reached out to an influencer. She was like, "Do you need help with, brand deals, any projects you're working on?" And the influencer responded, and she then became his assistant. She was paid, and it was experience that she was able to get had she had not done that, outreach. So I would definitely say, you know, don't feel discouraged. Embrace where you're at, because where you're at is further than where you might have been before, even if you don't feel that. And also do your best in finding opportunities that align with you, but also sometimes going the unconventional route. So maybe like social media or working with an influencer. Like I think with social media, there's definitely experience. There's definitely opportunities everywhere if you think about it. But I would definitely say never give up hope.
I agree. And I know you mentioned influencer marketing, and that's a little bit about what you do. And before we jump into that, Bo, I do know you mentioned that you before doing that you were in PR.
Yep.
So how was that experience? How did you get into PR, post college, and really just get into that industry?
Yeah. So within PR, public relations, it's also known as like media relations. There's also like corporate communications. I started interning with PR agencies that really focused on entertainment clients. So this was like celebrities or entertainment brands. And it was probably the second internship that I had. They worked with both entertainment brands like Warner Brothers and HBO, but they also worked with video game clients. And I guess I always knew that almost every brand had PR, but it was something that I never really thought so much about, because where I was at CISA, it was very rare that like we had someone come to talk to us and they mentioned that they did PR for like a tech or a video game company. So it was through that PR agency that I saw that there was a whole marketing structure behind a video game brand. And so from there, I ended up going into working for a video game company known as Electronic Arts. They are the creators of The Sims. They also do NHL, which is the hockey game, and UFC. And from there, I worked with their PR team. But at that time, this was like 2020, influencer marketing was already kind of taking shape. People and brands were working with influencers in a way we hadn't really seen before. So PR was starting to kind of adopt a little bit of, influencer marketing in some ways. So this looked like sending PR to like an influencer, whether it was going to be like a video game package where they were doing like a release of some sort. And so from there, I ended up after that internship with EA, I did another internship with the mobile game company, and then I was contacted by a recruiter at Poshmark, which is a mobile app for their PR team. And then after that internship ended up, they had a job opportunity open up on their growth marketing team to do influencer marketing and partnerships. And that's kind of how I went into influencer marketing from PR.
Nice. That is so cool. And I'm just like geeking over here. You were mentioning some amazing brands. I know you mentioned EA, Electronic Arts, and like Sims, which is like huge. These are like major, big name brands that you're mentioning. What was that experience for you to kind of like pause in that moment and walk back and be like, I'm just a first gen like college student, child of immigrants, and I'm in these big corporations. How did that feel, getting that,
Yeah.
first big salary? Because I know I had my experience with it.
It was definitely, I was very excited and this goes back to like, I was kind of delusional and I say that because when I applied to EA, I hadn't even finished my second internship. So I just said I was already doing video games PR because I technically was going to within that internship, and the applications for EA opened and I was like, I don't even know if they'll, accept me or like even consider me. And I just ended up, applying anyways. But one, I was really excited because it was a paid internship. It was paid. They also gave us a stipend because we were supposed to move to the Bay Area for like the summer. So that was supposed to happen, but then it ended up not happening because that was during the pandemic and everything that was happening. So I was so grateful that they ended up doing it remote and it was still great. So I will say my experience was overwhelming the first few weeks because I had never really been in a full corporate setting like that, especially on Zoom. I felt a lot of the times I was the only Latino in the room. I was also probably on my team, like one of the youngest. So not only was I grappling with that, but also just grappling with a lot of other things. And then the other thing too was that most of my peers who were also within the internship came from prestigious universities or universities that weren't Cal States. And you could definitely see just like the differences. I do remember one time there was another peer who was like, oh my God, like I'm also from a Cal State. I love that we're both from Cal States because a majority of the times and within video game and tech, companies, they don't necessarily, there's like this rule that they don't hire from like Cal States. So I think the fact for me to just really get into the door and really showcase what I was doing, it really was something that I was very proud of. And I know my parents were proud of me. The other part of me was also very excited because I grew up playing The Sims. Like that is something I started playing when I was 4 or 5. And, so for me to kind of start doing PR for the game was so interesting, but also surreal. And it was definitely a highlight in my career.
That is honestly so full circle moment, like to
Yeah.
go from playing a game and like, I'm sure little Carlo did not know that he was going to end up being a part of like the back end of that. That's honestly like so amazing. So I know we talked about EA and then you also mentioned Poshmark. So that was kind of your transition from PR to more so like influencer marketing. And I know this was like your previous role before jumping on and starting something of your own. So talk to us about Poshmark. I know you went from intern and were able to get all the way up to a manager. So like that growth experience and what it looked like and the behind the scenes of really just doing influencer marketing for something like Poshmark.
Yeah. Growing from an intern to manager is something that I will say, like, it still feels, it's not that it feels weird. It just feels like so much time has passed, but it also feels like not that much time has passed, but it was probably about like 5.5 years almost. When I started at Poshmark, the team there really believed in my career growth, which is why I went from intern to full-time employee. And so I really was taken on by the growth awareness team, which was within the growth marketing team. And they were really pivotal to my career trajectory at Poshmark and really just leading all of the things that I was leading and showing me the ins and outs. I think for me, what was so different with going from intern to manager is all of the kind of like yearly check-ins. I hadn't necessarily done yearly check-ins before in a job because I went from like college to part-time jobs to internships and then going from that to full-time. I had to understand like how to grow continuously throughout the year. So what this looked like was specifically within sometimes companies, they do like the yearly reviews, as you may know, but a lot of what gets you promoted or a lot of what gets you noticed and recognized by the people making those decisions is one, building that connection with everyone on your team, working well with others, but also leading a lot of the projects. So being able to get hands on a project and, really just take ownership of it and oversee it from start to finish. So that was something that I wouldn't say that I had to learn. It was something that I was doing. I just had to find a way that when I was in these, quarterly or yearly meetings, I had to really advocate for myself and share the story of what it is I was doing. And I think a lot of the times myself and maybe other first gens tend to sell ourselves short. We do so much, but we also sometimes feel like we didn't accomplish that much. And I think for the longest, specifically in my first 2 years at Poshmark, like I had a manager who'd be like, don't sell yourself short. Like you've done so much, like share what you've done, like take pride and take ownership in it. And it did take me a while to do that because I felt like I always did kind of sell myself short. And I think that's the experience for a majority of us. We feel a lot of the times that we do a lot of the work and we sometimes don't want to spotlight it because we do want to remain humble and we want to remain um humble, and we also want to just remain gracious for the opportunity. But I think that's something that as I've connected with other Latinos and Latinas within the field who have leadership positions, they've always told me to just own it and really appreciate and showcase what it is you're doing. Because, if you don't advocate for yourself, a lot of the times, sometimes other people won't.
No, I 100% agree. And I had someone once tell me who you are and where you come from is what makes you special, what makes you unique, because those experiences are the strengths that got you this job. And,
Yeah.
you as a person as a whole are like adding to this unit in this, machine that's this corporation. And like, that's the gem that we need. And I was just kind of like mesmerized because I was like, okay. And like you said, it's really just owning it and just really being proud of the roots and how far you're able to get along, how far you've come. And in a way, it's kind of like making our ancestors proud because you're
Yeah.
like, in a few years ago, like this would have never been like a mindset that anyone would have thought like, oh my God, like, Latinos are going to break into like the white collar jobs. And I just think that within itself is amazing.
I was gonna add to at the end. But yes, I think even like it makes our grandparents proud. Like I remember when I got these jobs, especially when I got the job at Poshmark, and my grandparents saw the trajectory of me going from like intern to then moving out on my own and then constantly traveling for work. They were very proud of me. My grandfather was always like, "Oh my God, like that's so amazing, like that this company does that," because a lot of the times we don't know that these companies do that. Like I never really knew how. One thing that I can share that this is so funny. I had no idea how expense reports worked. I did not know that you could, when you're a part of the company, if you travel or you do something and you use your card to pay for something, that it counts as a travel expense.
Hmm.
So when I first did the expense reports, like that was something that was crazy. I remember looking at like my coworkers and managers and be like, you can put the coffee in, and they're like, yes, like you got it while you were working, like you put that in. So it was so mind boggling to me because a lot of the times my parents or grandparents like didn't fill out expense reports or didn't do that. So I think it was always just so interesting and eye opening for me, just to see how proud of everything that I had accomplished they were.
At Poshmark, you shared that you did some amazing things. I think the biggest like accomplishment that I was like fangirling over was you helped push one of the first K-pop deals in the US.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Because not only are you like, kicking butt and like making this first deal like for the K-pop industry, but you're also, at the same time like the minority per se in the room that's making this happen. And I think that's just
Yeah.
something to be so proud of, that it's like you're the one that made that deal like come together with the team. So talk to us about that if you can.
Yeah, definitely. It was very an exciting time. I think I was about maybe 2 years already at Poshmark, and we had already done a lot of amazing celebrity partnerships. And when the team at, I believe it was a talent agency, had brought us, they, would share a variety of different artists that they began to represent. And one of the one of the bands that they were representing was known as ATEEZ. And so at the time, they were just about to launch their US tour, and they hadn't necessarily done anything within the US just yet. And so it was perfect to launch their closet. We saw that the K-pop community was very engaged, very enthusiastic, and huge fans of ATEEZ. And this was also around the time where we started to see a lot of K-pop start to kind of come into the mainstream. So bringing their first US partnership was interesting because it was something that for example, when we launched the closet, like we hadn't even dropped any of the items that they were selling. We had just launched the closet and we already saw like it get so many followers. We saw it get so much engagement. That was something that we were like, whoa. And I'll never forget that when we launched the closet, it sold out within, I think we did a few drops. I think we did about 4 drops. And the first drop, I want to say sold out within 8 or 10 seconds. There was like 10
Wow.
items and they sold within 8 or 10 seconds. It was like a record for us, because when we would do these celebrity closet drops, sometimes it would sell out within hours, sometimes it would be days, but with K-pop and ATEEZ, it was like within seconds. So it was something that was, huge and monumental. I think for me, it was exciting to work on because it's K-pop, to see where K-pop has how big K-pop has gotten from just back then. That was, I think, 2022. It's amazing. I mean, it's become a huge phenomenon. And I think it also just really showcases of the impact when people of color are behind the scenes for a lot of these corporations. We're not only blending the culture that we know, but the culture that we know others know and that are representative of that audience. And I think for me, it was exciting to be really leading the charge there, because that was not the only group that we brought to the US. We also work with Kenya. She's a Latin artist. We were her first US partnership as well. So it was really exciting to be behind the scenes leading that, but also just seeing the impact and the joy that it brought fans and the audiences that were tuned in and fans of them.
That's honestly so amazing. I know you mentioned Kenya. Were there like any other like cool artists that you guys work with? And you could just like name a few. Like, I just think that's so awesome.
Yeah, we worked with Doja Cat. That was also a big one that I remember. Like the day of launch, I was listening to her album Planet Her, and it was it was also so full circle because I was like, oh my gosh, we're like launching Doja Cat's closet. We also worked with Peyton List. She was on Cobra Kai. We did a closet for her, but we also did a press dressing where like we styled her for one of the premieres for Netflix's Cobra Kai. And then towards like the end of my journey at Poshmark, I worked with a lot of reality stars. So like we worked with a lot of the RuPaul drag stars. We worked with The Bachelorette, Love Island, Love is Blind, a lot of reality stars. So it was very like a full circle moment for me, because there was all these things that I love to watch and love to be a part of. And so to be able to kind of have that come full circle at Poshmark was amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And so I know you mentioned to me that you left Poshmark and that process. Do you
Mhm.
mind telling us a little bit about, your departure from Poshmark?
Yeah. So Poshmark went through a restructuring where it reduced the workforce and a few of us were impacted, I myself being one of them. And so I wrapped up my time at Poshmark at the end of October. I will say that having been first gen and that being like my first like big boy job and a job that I had really grown with, I think when it came to wrap up my time there was there was a loss of like identity. There was a loss of value in some way, because I think being first gen and having accomplished everything that I did, losing a job was kind of like, I did everything right. Why did this go wrong? And I think when I first was processing those emotions, it took some time for me to realize that it's just the job market and it was just things happening in the world. And that sometimes is just what happens with companies. And I think I also really just reminded myself that I had fallen so many times throughout my career, or I had faced setbacks, and I always just ended up pushing myself, motivating myself to continue. And that is what I really just ultimately reminded myself of. But I also just reminded myself of like how my grandparents, my parents, despite everything that they faced, all the challenges, they still managed to keep going and keep persevering. And that was something that just really I kept in the back of my mind as I was looking to what was next for me.
How did that process have you reevaluate like who you were and how you saw yourself outside of the corporate space?
It really had me reevaluate that even though I had a title and I was a part of a company that was pretty large, I also reminded myself that I was a lot of the creative force, I was a lot of the marketing force, and I was also a lot of the all of my experiences were what really led the programs to run that the way they did. And so it just reminded myself that even though I lost that title or I lost that role, I didn't lose who I was. Everything that I had accomplished, I still accomplished. It's still something that I have on paper. I have documentation of it. Like that doesn't leave you. But I think being first gen and dealing with a layoff of some sort like that, it really just puts things into perspective, but also just reminds you of reminding yourself who you are and also reminding of everything you've accomplished and how that doesn't leave you. You still always have it.
Yeah, no, and that's powerful. Was this the moment that you thought to yourself and realized like I have all the knowledge like you mentioned, that was just the title and a company that I worked for. I want to start something of my own.
Yeah, it definitely was something that I had always wanted to start something on my own. And I think I realized like all of the experience that I had already had, all of the knowledge that I learned. But I also like shortly after this, I was interviewing with a lot of like top entertainment brands and top talent agencies. And so it like the lights switched on and it was like, if other people know what it is I bring to the table and other people see what I've done and they're willing to interview and wanting to hire me, this can lead into something that I can build for myself and really just have something that, you know, I can lead and represent and that it won't go away the day of tomorrow. And I think that's something that I think most first gens who are like within the entrepreneurship space, also our grandparents, like they, a lot of immigrants who immigrated here are business owners. They are entrepreneurs in their own right. And I think it's something that they know it's always theirs and no one can take it away from you. And that's really what decided me to kind of go out on my own and really, build Lupercio Media, which is what I'm building.
So you started Lupercio Media
Yeah.
October of 2025.
Yep.
What was that moment to say like, all right, I'm going to do this full force, putting that trust in yourself and saying, yeah, and you mentioned like people value my work, people see my work, like, heck, why not start something of my own? And like that inspiration that you drew from your grandfather having his business and that whole culmination of everything for you to say, let's hit the ground running, let's do this.
Yeah. A lot of it was, it was for me. It was something I had always wanted to do. And I think when I just started it, I was like, if I don't start today, I'm never going to start it. And also, if I don't start, I won't know what it could flourish into or what I could build. And so I just remember I initially launched it as an influencer management agency. So I was just going to be working with influencers exclusively to manage them, build their media and PR presence, but also secure brand partnerships for them. And so when I got on these calls, they believed in my vision. They saw what I was capable of, what I was able to do. And it's something that I had already kind of been doing at Poshmark, already. The only difference is that I wasn't tied to a brand. I was just kind of tied to myself, but it is already what I was already doing just without the brand. And for me, when I got the first influencer signed on, I was like, okay, I can do this. And then once I got the first brand deal, I was like, this is going in the right direction. And for me, it was just exciting, but also rewarding in myself that despite everything that had happened in those last like 2 months leading up to it, it was something that I was able to build for myself and continue to pursue.
So your agency centers itself on working with Latino women and LGBTQIA plus creators.
Yeah.
Why was that important and like the center of the mission that you created with Lupercio Media?
Yeah, women are pivotal to, I was raised by a lot of strong women. I am Latino and LGBTQIA. So really partnering with creators who are people of color, who are part of communities that I'm a part of, it was something that was what I really wanted to represent. I also had, seen some TikToks of creators of color who have mentioned that they felt underrepresented when it came to brand partnerships or just being within the creator space. And I really wanted to lead that change in changing that. A lot of the times, creators of color don't have the best representation, or they are often cast aside by agencies. And so when I founded Lupercio Media, I really wanted to change all of that. And so when you sign on to my agency, you get me 24/7. I'm really advocating for you, not just for brand partnerships, but for events, media, PR, like essentially your career. I'm here to, one, help navigate you through the brand deal and influencer marketing space, but also just to be there as like the advocate for you on all things, influencer and career related. So it was really important for me to represent people that were a part of the communities and a part of, my experience within this space and within life.
I think that's one of the amazing reasons why I was like so interested in having you come onto the podcast. And I shared this with you previously. Like, that's kind of what we're trying to do here with Mijo podcast and with,
Yeah.
this media agency that we're creating. It's like really uplifting and empowering people of color. And at the end of the day, for me, it was people that I could relate to, communities that I represent myself with, because
Yeah.
similar to that, right? It's like, we're always trying to build that in for other agencies. And at some point you just realize like, you know what? If you're not going to take this and you're not going to value it, I'm going to build it for myself. I have the knowledge. I have the resources. I have connections to other people who, fit within these circles. So why not do that? You mentioned talking about managing 6 creators.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Because I know you have some pretty awesome people that you manage, and they're all amazing. But I know you have some like, some people that even I'm myself a fan of. I know you. It's like Jesus La Comadre, Tony Vara. Like, how does it feel to be able to say like, I'm a part of their team and I'm helping them, get that representation?
Yeah, I think when I first signed on creators, it was something that I was glad to sign them on, and I was glad to really help build their journey within the influencer space. And one thing that just always stands out and why I love being a part of their teams is just like, they always are like, I really appreciate everything you've done for me and everything you have really advocated for me for. So it's hearing that it shows that I am doing a great job in representing them. And it's something that I'm proud to say, like, I represent them and I am here, working for them and working alongside them on all these deals. It does feel sometimes surreal. I was like telling Tony and Jesus that I used to have like a burner TikTok before like I got like an actual like public TikTok. I just had like a TikTok where I would just like, follow people and like stuff, because I didn't really post before. And so I was like, I always followed you guys from like my burner TikTok. And I grew up with some of the people that I do represent. I did see them go from like starting on TikTok to growing into the TikTok stars that they are now. So it's always amazing to just kind of see that journey full circle. And then also just to kind of see what I've been able to lead and accomplish for them. A majority of my creators have really big years. So I'm very excited for all of the things that we've been able to work together to launch as well.
What excites you the most about creating something that really reflects like your values and that really encompasses like that hard work that you're putting in?
It feels amazing. I think especially during this time with everything going on in the world, it really just shows how I'm able to work with these creators to lead the change. For example, one of the creators that I worked with this past December, he launched a flea market and toy drive the toy drive was benefiting the kids of their parents were affected by the ICE raids. And so being able to just be a part of that, like, for me, it was important because not only am I representing creators and, of course, brand partnerships, but also representing them in things that matter to them. And a majority of the creators that I work with are advocates in their own right. And so for me, it feels great to have contributed to something that is powerful and impactful and also is uplifting other people that, you know, haven't been uplifted or just haven't felt that uplifted by someone else. So it's been amazing to be a part of that change. So I think for me, just working with creators that who look like me, are a part of the same communities like me, it's amazing. And it's something that I love working with them. And I know they love working with me. So it's also something that it fills my heart.
I think, these small little wins along the way have really tied back to like how successful your journey has been, not only with starting your agency, but just the trajectory of like your entire career. Would you say your outlook or your definition of success has changed going from corporate days to now, being a founder and being head of this agency? Like, how has that definition changed for you?
Definitely. It's definitely changed so much. I think for me, when I was in corporate, it really was about, getting the next title. It was about building, an organization and moving along the ladder there. Whereas now as an agency owner, I wouldn't say it's like I've started from ground zero, but when you're building something for the first time, you, in a way, are kind of starting from ground zero because your outlook is a little bit different. Like when I first started this, it's not like I was making money right off the bat. Like that's not how something works when you found something or you start something. A lot of the times it takes time to really build that and build that income. So I think for me, it looks different. Like the things that I am accomplishing now or that I am gearing towards accomplishing, it just looks different as a founder of an agency versus like had I been, um, a part of a corporate organization. For example, like if I was a part of a corporate organization, it would have a success would have looked like getting to be a part of a project and leading it. Where now it's like the success for me is like going to build out that project, leading it, and then just trying to just really execute it. Um, I would say it's different now.
To add on to that, now that you're saying like, things are different now, what, with the knowledge that you've gained with starting Lupercio Media, what would you say is something that you wish someone would have told you at the beginning of your career? And like, tell that to our audience, like let them know like, hey, like I've been through it, through the corporate and now through this project that I'm creating, and like, here's my advice.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would have loved to hear is like really build your personal brand and who you are outside of an organization. I think a lot of the times when we're first gen or just starting something, we really lean into the corporation or the organization that we're a part of because it is something that it is a metric of success for us. And I think for me, it's not that it was hard, but it was something that I did. And it was something that I was like, damn, if I did this a little bit earlier, it probably wouldn't have been as hard. But when you're part of a brand for so long, you kind of really become intertwined with that brand. And so it's not that I didn't have a personal brand. I knew who I was outside of Poshmark. I knew that I was an influencer marketer. I knew that I did PR and I was within the marketing space, but trying to showcase that outside of that organization was something that was a little tricky for me. So I would definitely say if there's a piece of advice, it would be to always just, figure out what your personal brand is, figure out what it is you're good at, and showcase the organizations you're a part of as like a brand you work with, but not your entire identity. Because when the trajectory changed for me, it's not that it was hard for me to focus on who I was as a personal brand, but it was something that I just wish I always kind of had that in mind. It just, I think, would have made things a lot simpler.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for other first gen folks who are kind of stuck between, kind of like what you just mentioned, like stuck between that phase of like wanting to start something, but really just thinking about it because of the stability of what, a corporate job might bring you. I know you mentioned, damn, I wish I would have started this sooner, but I'm
Yes.
sure that was a big thing that you factored, especially, going into adulthood and like moving out on your own, saying like, do I chase this project, give it a shot and like give it my all? Or do I pick the safe route and have the secure income and have the secure stability of that career? Like, having you done both, what advice do you have for people that identify that way?
Yeah, I think if stability is where you're headed, if what you're geared towards, it's something that I don't regret going after the stability, but I think what I wish is I would have maybe started this simultaneously building something of my own. It's something that you can build while you're pursuing a career in corporate. I've seen a lot of people do it both hand in hand. One of the mentors that I chatted with before founding this agency, he was in corporate and he started building his own agency on the side. And it was something that he was able to kind of do simultaneously. I would definitely say that if you're looking to pursue something creative, don't ever lose sight of it. Whether you're only dedicating an hour or two throughout the week to it, still keep at it. It's something that, it feeds you and you don't lose it. And it's something that you can always make the time for. And I'm a firm believer in what's meant to be will be. And I think when you are still building something, whether it be in the creative space, an agency or marketing space, it's something that you can continuously build while you're pursuing stability. And you never know when that moment might be that creative or passion project that you're working on might take off and it then can lead to something stable.
And if someone's listening right now and they're scared to bet on themselves, what would you want them to hear?
I would want them to hear that you really can't lose betting on yourself because at the end of the day, it's you. And betting on yourself is always the best thing that you can make. And I would say that there also comes no harm in betting on yourself. If an opportunity passes or something, there's always another opportunity that will pop up. I'm always a firm believer in that when one door closes, another will open and it'll redirect you to where it is that you're meant to be. So I would definitely say if you're out there and you're kind of unsure of what it is that you want to do, try it out. You really don't have any harm in trying something out. I always tell people that you try one thing and if it doesn't work, you can try another or you can keep at it. There's really no harm in betting on yourself and trying things out. I think a lot of the times, first gen, we don't have the opportunity to be creative and we don't have the opportunity to explore other things. And I think it's something that I wish I probably would have done. And so I would definitely say that if you're kind of choosing between the two, definitely bet on yourself and take the route that feels more personal to you, but also feels more aligned with what it is you're looking to grow.
It's great advice. When you zoom out and look at your journey from CSUN, in higher education to corporate, um, to now building your own agency, what would you say you're most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I think for me is showing other first generation kids and showing other Latinos and people that are part of the LGBTQIA community that your dreams are possible to achieve, whether it be joining corporate, whether it be working in marketing or for your favorite company or launching something of your own. I think for me, just the amount of times people have told me that I have inspired them or I've motivated them, like even friends of mine are like, I can't believe you did that. Like, that's amazing. I think for me, my journey has always been not just for me, but for others too. Like it's something that I'm I'm proud of what I've accomplished because I know that a lot of times either people in my family were not in those rooms or others were not in the rooms that I was in. And so I feel like I do most of this for people that are, not able to be there and advocating for them. And so I would say that for me, my journey is something that I hope it inspires and motivates someone else. And it's kind of why I started documenting a little bit more on TikTok to kind of show what the journey has been for me, but also just to really uplift and inspire others who are maybe interested in kind of doing what it is that I'm doing, or just looking for some insight into how to build a career post college.
It's truly inspiring to see other Latinos and other first gen folks going out and really just putting themselves in spaces and creating projects of their own. And props to you for all of that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No, I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope, my story resonates with someone listening, or inspires or motivates. And no matter where you are in your journey, whether it be school, career, just know that, you have my support. I'm sure people have your support as well. So I'm glad to have been a part of the podcast, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Carlo. And thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.